This is the second video which looks at episodes in Season 2 of Star Trek, the original series, or Generation. In order to identify historical references, events, times, places, which can be used to determine the original history of the Star Trek universe. Special thanks to the transcripts which can be found on the Shoketo site. The episode order is the production order. In order to understand the development of the history or vision of Star Trek, we need to study the episodes in the order they were written. While I'm uncertain of the exact writing order, the production order is about as close as I can get, and that's what I'm going to be using. When Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek back in 1966, he had a vision which remained basically consistent over the following 3 years. The animated series and early movies retained this consistency in the most part. When The Next Generation was released in 1987, Gene's vision had changed, and the past needed to change in order to be consistent with this new vision. This video series will look at the original vision of Star Trek, starting with the earliest source material. Any historical facts from later sources, such as latest TV series, which contradict the earlier references, must be assumed to be in error or possibly relate to a different timeline. Minor changes in nomenclature can be excused. Wolf in the Fold is the 14th episode of the second season. It was the 36th episode produced. Its stardate is 3614.9 and its original air date was 22nd of December 1967. We discover another planet, Argulius. This looks very much like a Federation alien member planet, although the inhabitants are definitely humanoid, and you could possibly say that they're human, and there is a very good chance that maybe they are, but it's more likely that it is another humanoid alien civilization. Kirk, yes, the Argillians think very highly of their pleasure. McCoy, that is an understatement if I've ever heard one. This is a completely hedonistic society. Captain's log, stardate 3614.9. Planet Argilius 2. While on therapeutic shore leave, Mr. Scott has fallen under suspicion of having brutally murdering an Argillian woman. The chief city administrator, Mr. Hengist, has taken charge of the investigation, but has learned little of value. Hengist, no, Argilius hires its administrative officers from other planets. The Argillians aren't very efficient, gentle, harmless people. Mr. Scott. Now you are sure you've never seen this before. He shows the knife. We are introduced to another planet, Rigel 4, which is also a Federation planet, and it is part of a series of Rigel planets. There's a Rigel 12, a Rigel 7, a Rigel 2, and a Rigel. I have to assume that these must be in different systems, but if they're in a single system, this could be a trinary system with lots of habitable planets. Another mystery to solve in the future. Hengist, if this was my home planet, Rigel 4, I'd have dozens of investigators working on this matter, but they don't exist here. Computer, artifact produced by hill people of Argus River region, planet Rigel 4. We're introduced to another alien species. This seems to be a single individual or possibly a colony creature, and it has claimed to have existed for all eternity, which is highly unlikely because there would be nothing to eat at the beginning of time because there's no creatures to feed off their fear. Quotes, yes, there is something here, something terrible. I feel its presence. Fear, anger, hatred. Anger feeds the flame. Oh, there is evil here, monstrous, terrible evil, consuming hunger, hatred of all that lives, hatred of woman, a hunger that never dies. It is strong, overpowering, an ancient terror. It has a name. Beritus, Keslar, Rejak, devouring all life, all light, a hunger that will never die. Rejak. Voice, I am without ending. I have existed from the dawn of time, and shall I live beyond its end. In the meantime I shall feed, and this time I do not need a knife. You will all die horribly in searing pain. Computer, Rejak, Source Earth, 19th century, language English, nickname for mass murder of woman, other Earth synonym, Jack the Ripper. Computer again, working, 1932, Shanghai, China, Earth, 7 woman knifed to death. 1974, Kiev, USSR, Earth, 5 women knifed to death. 2105, Martian colonies, 8 women knifed to death. 2156, Heliopis, Earth, Alpha Eranti 2, 10 women knifed to death. There are additional examples. Spock, Captain, these places are aligned directly between Argulis and Earth. Kirk: yes, when a man moved out into the galaxy, that thing must have moved with him. Computer, identify the proper name. Kelsa Ambertus. Computer, working. Kessler, name given to unidentified mass murder of woman on planet Deneb 2. Bertus, name given to unidentified mass murder of women on planet Rigel 4. Additional data. Murders on Rigel 4 occurred 1 solar year ago. All heads turn towards Mr. Hingist. Kirk, you come from Rigel 4. Another planet is mentioned, Alpha Carinus 5. Computer, the Drella of Alpha Carinus 5 derives nourishment from the emotions of love. There is sufficient procedure for existence of a creature, nature unknown, which could exist on emotion of fear. Clearly this planet is an alien planet and it has some sort of inhabitants, although it's not indicated if these inhabitants are intelligent or if they've created civilization. But there's certainly something there which derives nourishment from love, which means it probably is an intelligent creature of some description or civilization. We're given the name of another planet, Alpha Majoris 1. In this case, it's inhabited by cloud creatures. So clearly, could be intelligent, but it's certainly nothing in the way humanoid. Computer, affirmative. President, Melitus, cloud creature of Alpha Majoris 1. We're given the name of another planet, Alpha Iridanti 2. Now, it is almost certainly a Earth member planet or Earth colony, and we know that there were Earthlings on it in 2156, so it had been colonised to some extent. It's likely that it was not a colony planet, or if it was a colony planet, it was a reasonably developed one, because otherwise why would the creature go to a sparsely populated planet? Computer, working, 1932, Shanghai, Earth, China, 7 women knifed to death. 1974, Kiev, USSR, Earth, 5 women knifed to death. 2105, Martian colonies, 8 women knifed to death. 2156, Heliopolis, Alpha Iranti 2, 10 women knifed to death. There are additional examples. We get a mention of the Martian colonies. The Martian colonies experienced a series of murders in 2105, which is 150 years ago. This is well before the Earth-Romulan War and just after the invention of warp drive. It's assumed these colonies were reasonably developed by this year, as why would the creature go to a sparsely populated place? The United Earth Territories probably spanned 50 light years from Earth in all directions in 2060, so this planet was probably in that area and had 40 or 50 years to develop. Computer, working, 1932. Shanghai, China, Earth, 7 women knifed to death. 1974, Kiev, USSR, Earth, 5 women knifed to death. 2105, Martian colonies, 8 women knifed to death. We discover the name of yet another planet, Deneb 2. Now, we don't know very much about this planet at all, but it's probably a human planet, probably, or at the very most an alien humanoid planet, otherwise the creature possibly would not be able to feed there. The creature started on Earth and got used to a Earth diet for some reason, so we presumably have to assume that it prefers that kind of food, that kind of fear, etc. Computer, working, Kessler, name given to unidentified mass murder of women on planet Deneb 2. In this episode we're told that the crew of the Enterprise is 440. This does not mesh exactly with the previous numbers, but possibly the crew goes up and down based on the mission it undertakes. Spock, indeed, it will try, but not immediately. We know it feeds on fear and terror. There are nearly 440 humans aboard this ship. Surely it will try to breed fear and terror before it kills. In conclusion, we get a reasonable list of new planets. Argilius, an alien planet inhabited by humanoids, but probably not of Earth. Rigel 4, while not stipulated, this may well be a human planet. Rigel 2 and Rigel are human planets, which are not colonies, so are probably members of the Federation. Rigel 4 may be the same. It's also logical, considering the alien which feeds on fear seems to like humans. Alpha Carinus 5, which is almost certainly an alien planet. It's unknown if it's a Federation planet. I suspect not. Deneb 2, of which we have almost no information. The inhabitants must be humanoid and probably Terran, so this is probably a Federation Earth planet as well. Alpha Eridani 2, which is probably an Earth planet, probably a member planet of the Federation, which was developed in 2156. which is more than 100 years old, exactly 119 years. The murder occurred during the Earth-Romulan War. It's a rather old planet. Martian colonies, which are colonies of a non-colonial Mars, or non-colony Mars, experienced 8 women knifed to death in 2105, which is after warp is discovered and before Zephyrin disappears. These colonies were probably within 50 light years of Earth and may have had 40 to 50 years to develop and populate before the creature went there to feed. The Enterprise now has a crew of almost 440, so the crew number must fluctuate quite a bit. We discover an alien of non-corporeal form which feeds on fear, called, among other things, Rejak. It was on Earth around 1900, so it would be interesting to determine how it got there. It claimed to have lived from the dawn of time, so it may represent a very early life form. On the other hand, what would it feed on in the dawn of time? So I suspect it probably came into existence about the time humanoids developed on Earth. It clearly didn't have space travel until it was brought to new planets by the Federation. So that's my guess, and that's what I'm going to stick with. The Changeling is the 3rd episode of the 2nd season. It was the 37th episode produced. Its star date is 3451.9 and its original broadcast date was 29th of September 1967. The Malurians are an alien race which lives in a system, or systems, consisting of 4 planets. The population was 4 billion people. All were eliminated by Nomad. The Federation had a science team working with them. Presumably it was also eliminated. Kirk, any response from the Malurians, Lieutenant? Kirk, what about the Federation science team working there? Dr. Manway had a special transmitter. Spock, Captain, they will not answer. The long-range sensor sweep of the system reveals no sign of life. Kirk, that can't be. The last census reported a total inhabitation of more than 4 billion people. Kirk, Lieutenant, contact Starfleet Command, patch in my log, tell them what has occurred. Tell them that the entire Malurian race seems to have been destroyed by an unknown agency and that we are under attack by an unidentified force. McCoy, unstable infestation, the population of 4 planets. What kind of function? In this episode, we discover the Enterprise shields are able to absorb 90 photon torpedoes, and it can do this 4 times. This seems highly unrealistic. 9 possibly, and even that seems quite extreme. Spock, temporary captain, our shields absorbed energy equivalent to 90 of our photon torpedoes. Kirk, 90? Spock, I may add, the energy used repulsing the first attack reduced our shielding power 20%. Spock, we can resist 3 more such attacks. The 4th will shatter our shields completely. Earth sent a probe called Nomad out in the early 2000s to search for new life. The diagram says 2002. It was damaged and eventually merged with a powerful alien probe. As it was heading towards Earth, possibly it was coming from the far side of the Malurians, which presumably were an alien race beyond Federation space. Unless it was randomly moving around, it must have travelled an immense distance. I suspect it did travel an immense distance, but once damaged, floated for a period of time before merging and starting to destroy life. This may have occurred recently, otherwise we would have heard of great swaths of the galaxy sterilised. The point is, Nomad must have had FTL drive, which means it may have used an early version of impulse drive with FTL capabilities, the first FTL probe. As the Vulcans may have made contact as early as 1996, or more likely 1997, it gave Earth 5 years to create an early copy of the Vulcan impulse drive. Kirk, wasn't there a probe called Nomad launched in the early 2000s? Nomad, my function is to probe for biological infestations, to destroy that which is not perfect. I am Nomad. McCoy, as I recall, it wasn't. It was supposed to be the first interstellar probe to seek new life forms. Spock, it was. It was damaged in deep space. Undoubtedly the meteor collision. Its memory banks were destroyed, or most of them. It wandered without purpose, and then it met the other. The other was an alien probe of great power. Somehow they merged, repaired each other's, and became one. In summary, the Federation are in contact with a 4-planet civilization called the Malurians, which consists of 4 billion people. They must have been an alien race and probably beyond Federation space. Most likely not part of the Federation. they were eliminated in this episode. We know the Federation sent a probe out in the early 2000s, which seemed to use FTL drive. If it lacked FTL drive, then even if it was somehow propelled to light speed, which means it could never stop anywhere to check for life, but just let that one pass for now, it would have travelled a maximum of 262 light years from Earth, which puts it firmly well in Federation space. While it's possible the Malurians were a Federation member, it does not explain the alien probe. The probe was of a superior level of technology and power and was searching for planets to colonise. It's unlikely this would be occurring almost 200 light years in Federation space. The probe used FTL drive, a very early version and possibly a test of the prototype impulse drive as we use ion drives in our probes today, well before we are planning to using it for manned spacecraft. It's assumed the SS Valiant took 20 years to travel 400 light years. If the probe speed was a quarter and travelled for a maximum of 240 years, it could have travelled 1200 light years. This is a bit far, so I suspect the real distance travelled is no more than, let's say, 800 light years, and it spent almost 100 years floating around. I suspect this was the first FTL probe. Perhaps it was an early form of impulse drive. The primary power system was called AN57 and the drive was called Magnet One du Dynamic Venier Pulse 16K3. The word pulse is included, so if we add im in front of it, we end up with impulse. The diagram has a date of 2002. It was destroyed and floated around a long time before merging with an alien probe of immense power, after which it started sterilising planets. There must be an unknown, very powerful race beyond the Malurians. The reason why I think it was floating around for a long time is because if it was operating for 100 years, it would have left a swath of death across the galaxy. My guess is the Marillions were one of its first targets, thus it would have been fully repaired shortly before 2265. If I'm wrong, then as the Federation moves out in this direction, they will probably find a huge swath of sterilised planets. Good for colonisation, but not really good for the people that were there in the first place. The Apple is the 5th episode of the 2nd season. It was the 38th episode produced. Its stardate is 3018.2 and its original air date was 27th of October 1967. We discover a new unexplored planet, Gamma Trianguli 6. Captain's log, Stargate 3715.3. While making a routine exploration of the unexplored Gamma Trianguli 6 planet, one of my men has been killed by a poisonous dart, or plant. For a second, or actually even third time, we are reminded the Federation uses currency. Kirk, trying to get yourself killed. Do you know how much Starfleet is invested in you? Spock replies, 122,200. We discover that Gamma Trianguli 6 has an automated guardian called Val, which looks after and controls the people of the planet, who in turn feeds it with human food or organic food. Not sure why, but there it is. Akuta, I am the eyes of Val, he must see. Kirk, who is Val? Akuta, Val is Val, he is everything. Captain's log, stardate 3715.6. We have been introduced to Val, evidently the source of the planet's power emanations, and possibly the force that threatens both us and our ship. For the first time, Spock mentions the existence of a non-interference directive, possibly a precursor to the Prime Directive. Spock, if we do what it seems we must, in my opinion it will be in direct violation of the Non-Interference Directive. Spock, Kirk, these are people, not robots. They should have the opportunity of choice. We owe it to them to interfere. Spock, Starfleet Command may think otherwise. In conclusion, the only piece of tangible information we can glean from this episode is the existence of an alien people living on a new planet called Gamma Trianguli 6. By the end of the episode, it becomes clear these people are not a member of the Federation, but will become a member of the Federation, whether they like it or not. They are alien, but still humanoid. Some minor info is also provided. The Federation uses currency, and we get the first reference of a Prime Directive, although it's not called that. Mirror Mirror is the 4th episode of the 2nd season. It was the 39th episode produced. Its stardate is unknown and its original air date was 6th of October 1967. We are introduced to another alien planet, Harlequin, probably not part of the Federation, and refusing to allow mining by the Federation. It has lots of dilithium crystals. Tharn, we believe what you say, Captain Kirk, but our position is not altered. The Harlequin Council cannot permit your Federation to mine dilithium crystals on our planet. We discover an alternate universe. We had a glimpse of an alternate place or another place in an earlier episode, but there the life form was something completely different to what we would imagine as humanoid or anything. In this case, the alternate universe seems to contain humanoids or actually even Earth people, just like our own universe. In this alternate universe, the Federation is not a federation, but it's an empire and rules in the manner not unlike the Klingons. Captain's log, stardate unknown. During an iron storm, my landing party has been back to the Enterprise and found it, and the personnel aboard changed. The ship is subtly altered physically. Behaviour and discipline has become brutal, savage. Kirk, yes, here. Not our universe, not our ship. Something parallel. A parallel universe coexisting with ours on another dimensional plane. Everything duplicated, almost. Another Enterprise. Spock with a beard. We discover in this universe Kirk is not a particularly nice person and in fact assassinated Pike in order to get command of the Enterprise. Computer, Captain James T. Kirk, succeeded to command ISS Enterprise through assassination of Captain Christopher Pike. First action, suppression of Gorlan uprising through destruction of rebel home planet. Second action, execution of 5,000 colonists on Vega 9. In the alternate universe, we hear of a Gorlan uprising. Presumably the planet Gorlan revolted, so may also be in the Federation now. It looks like a member of the Federation, based on the name, but is probably an alien planet. Computer, first action, suppression of Gorlan uprising through destruction of rebel home planet. Second action, execution of 5,000 colonists on Vega 9. In the alternate universe, there is a planet, or a colony planet, called Vega 9. Once again, it's assumed to also exist in the Federation. It looks very much like an Earth colony. Computer, second action, execution of 5,000 colonists on Vega 9. In the alternate universe, it's predicted the Empire will fall by 2505, or at least that's when there is a galactic revolt, which presumably will be the cause of its collapse. Kirk, in that time I have something to say. How long before the Harlequin prediction of galactic revolt is realised? Spock, approximately 240 years. Kirk, the inevitable outcome. Spock, the Empire shall be overthrown, of course. In conclusion, we can add 3 planets to our list of planets. Harlequin is an alien, non-Federation planet. Gorlan looks like an alien Federation member planet. And Vega 9 is a Earth colony planet. Harlequin must be beyond a Federation space, or just near a border. There is a Vega colony, perhaps this is a Vega 1. Thus it looks like up to 9 Earth colonies in the Vega system, or systems. Apart from all this information apart from this, all the information is really about the alternate human empire. Kirk assassinates Pike, the Federation is replaced by a militaristic empire, which is predicted to fall in 2505. As it's a galactic revolt, it's assumed the Empire will end up being much larger than the Federation when it finally collapses. It's also quite possible that it's much larger than the Federation is today, although that's probably not the case, otherwise the poor old Halkins would have been dealt with a long time ago. The Deadly Years is the 12th episode of the second season. It was the 40th episode produced. Its stardate is 3478.2 and its original air date was 8th of December 1967. Another planet, Gamma Hydra 4, is an experimental colony. We know that if you travel to Starbase 10, you will go through the Romulan neutral zone. Gamma Hydra 4 and Starbase 10 must be close to the neutral zone, with a bit of the neutral zone sticking out in between them. Captain's log, Stargate 3478.2. On a routine mission to resupply the experimental colony at Gamma Hydra 4, we discover a most unusual phenomenon. Of the 6 members of the colony, none of which who were over 30, we found 4 had died and 2 were dying of old age. Spock, I've rechecked the sensors, Captain. Gamma Hydra 4 checks out as a Class M planet with conventional oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere and normal mass. I can find nothing at all out of the ordinary. We get another starbase, in this case Starbase 10. We know it's close to the neutral zone, and that's about all we know. We can also assume, because we're dealing with a new starbase and not good old familiar Starbase 12, we've moved to a new part of the Federation. I'm not quite sure where, but possibly at the other end of the Romulan border, or neutral zone. Stocker, I'm sure you understand that I'm anxious to get to Starbase 10 to assume my new post. Stocker later then says, facilities at Starbase 10 are more complete than those on board ship. Seems to me that your investigations would be facilitated if we proceed there. I assure you of all cooperation. We get to be told of a new planet, Aldebaran 3, but we are uncertain what type of planet it is. Some sort of research was being done, so I have to assume it's another research planet. Wallace, a few years ago on Aldebaran 3, my husband and I tried various carbohydrate compounds to slow down the degeneration of plant life. I suspect this could be an experimental agricultural planet, which makes sense considering the research being undertaken. In conclusion, apart from the obvious episode plot, the main information we have is we get 3 new planets. Gamma Hydra 4, which is an experimental colony planet, with a small outpost of scientists. Aldebaran 3, which I assume is also an experimental colony planet. As research on planets were being conducted, it's probably an agricultural research planet. It may now be a full colony planet with colonists. Finally, another starbase, in this case, Starbase 10. The iMud is the 8th episode of the 2nd season. It was the 41st episode produced. Its stardate is 4513.3 and its original air date was 3rd of November 1967. We discover an unknown planet. We are never given its name, but this is an outpost of a lost civilization on an uninhabitable planet. Warp 7 or 4 for 4 days could have allowed them to travel 12 light years, which seems very small. Perhaps the Enterprise was already at the edge of Federation explored space. Captain's log, Stargate 4513.3. After having been taken over by an android, the Enterprise has been underway at Warp 7 for 4 days. Now we are entering orbit around a planet which has never been charted. Norman, our planet's surface is what you classify as K-type, adaptable for humans by use of pressure domes and life support systems. To one of the 2 identical women standing by the doorway, I have brought them. We discover a civilization in the Andromeda Galaxy. The androids were created by a civilization from Andromeda, which was destroyed by a supernova. Only a few outposts survived, the one in the Milky Way being one. The androids looked after the Andromedan survivors, but they eventually died out. Later we are told you can place a human brain in an android and it would operate for 500,000 years. So it's possible the home planet was destroyed more than 500,000 years ago. Kirk, Norman, who created you? Norman, the makers created us. They came from the galaxy of Andromeda. McCoy, then your makers weren't humanoid. Norman, they were, as you say, quite humanoid, but unlike your civilization, robots were common. We performed the necessary service functions and freed our makers to evolve a perfect social order. Kirk, what became of them? Norman, our home planet's sun became a nova. Only a few exploratory outposts survived. This unit, myself, was part of one such outpost in your galaxy. Kirk, then some of your makers survived. Norman, no, Captain, they died over a stretch of time. We get some minimal information about the androids. Apparently the life expectancy or duration of the Alice model is 500,000 years. Alice 19. None of our android bodies has ever worn out. However, the estimated duration of this model is 500,000 years. Uhura, 500,000 years? Mudd mentions another planet, in this case Deneb 5. We know there is a Deneb 2 and a Deneb 4, both of which are human Federation member planets. While I originally thought this was an alien planet, it's probably another human planet. If alien, it may have been very primitive when the Federation arrived, allowing Earth to colonise other planets in the same system. Deneb 5 implies there is a Deneb 1 and Deneb 3. Mudd, I sold the Denebians all rights to the Vulcan fuel synthesizers. Kirk, and the Denebians contacted the Vulcans? Mudd, worse than that. You know that what the penalty for fraud is on Deneb 5? Spock, the guilty party has his choice. Death by electrocution, death by gas, death by phaser, death by hanging. Mudd, the key word in your entire percolation, Mr. Spock, was death. Barbarians, well, of course, I left. In conclusion, we discover another Federation planet, this time a Deneb 5. A now dead civilization in the Andromeda Galaxy had an outpost in the Milky Way inhabited by androids. It's probable the last of the aliens died out a long time, with their whole planet being destroyed by a supernova more than 500,000 years ago. There are other outposts somewhere. Obviously there may be some in the Andromeda Galaxy, but it also seemed to imply there may be others in the Milky Way Galaxy. This ends part 2 of the episode analysis of Season 2. The episode scripts can be found in the URL shown or in the description. It becomes obvious that many of the later Star Trek movies and shows do not align with the original vision of the series. This is common in real history as later historians attempt to change the past to justify their beliefs in the present. Live long and prosper, fellow Trekkies.